Hmm. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's about noon. I'm here again. It's Monday, June 2nd. So we are in the throes of summer. Again, it's just a little bit like the last live. I just have a hard time seeing this stuff on the mainstream media. And in this case, even in the alternate media without needing to respond and hopefully give people accurate and calm assessment. That's my hope, anyway. This thing with Russia is beyond belief. Everyone has seen it now. I'm live, but I'll be talking about it more with Sean at tonight. So you can look for the link and pick up that live too. But this, I wanted to say a few things because I don't want it to get too old. It's really crazy what the mainstream is doing with it. The media is wild and off base, especially the Western media, of course. But even the online, there are a lot of detractors, a lot of emotional uh, responses that are just crazy. And we need to tell the truth about what's happening. That has been the war. That is the war, and that's the war this time. The West uses the media like a tool brilliantly, but partly because they own everything. It's not. It's not that they're so golden tongued. They just lie over and over and over again. So I want to do what we always do: correct, calmly redirect. Um, the first thing, you know, Kiev says, and New York Post, and this is Kiev's Pearl Harbor. I mean, Moscow's Pearl Harbor. This is devastating and surprising, audacious and bold, and it's just so ridiculous. It is. There are things to say about what happened, but it isn't 40 strategic bombers. It isn't. It's in the middle of everything else that had gone on. This spider web, a secret thing, Zelensky has said had been planned for a year and a half, clearly with hallmarks of MI6 and control. From the Brits, obviously the Americans at some level, and NATO. I mean, this is more of everything. It's a NATO US war against Russia. Ukraine is the unfortunate proxy, and Zelensky is inviting the devastation of his country in the name of this proxy hood. But that's what's going on. So that's it's not devastation. Let's just make that clear that people have been reading hyped traditionally and constantly overhyped Western media narratives, even from Russian sources and even from other world sources, that want to jump on this because it sounds good. This is a bunch of containers on trucks crossed into Russia, probably through Kazakhstan, and launch drones. Depending on what happens too, the dust is still settling. But depending on what we find out finally, it looks like 4 or 5, maybe up to 8 planes were hit. Tu 295s, although that's not clear that all of them. There was an AN 12, 112 that was going to be retired anyway. I mean, a lot of this is ass covering by Russians who were surprised, but not in the way that you might think, and certainly not in the way that the West is presenting it. In the first place, this is a Eastern created surprise attack in a guerrilla type movement behind enemy lines in Russia. Okay, there's no way to deny that. It's included air bases that are for strategic bombers. It also included distractionary civilian casualties on purpose. This is pure terrorism. There's no way around that either. This is in Bryansk and trains heading to Moscow, where these bridges were blown up just as passenger trains passed. So that has to be highly coordinated, and it has to be on purpose to create civilian deaths, merely to create a scare so that there would be confusion and chaos. It's possible. Now, there were 5 air bases targeted. 3 of them got nothing done to them. So that's important to say. 2 out of 5 is not devastating or huge. It is the point. These Russians say this is terrorism, but you don't take everything with a grain of salt. And these were clearly military targets, and they were clearly using military means, but they were using civilian infrastructure, civilian supply chains. In some cases, unknowing drivers. There is no way there were civilians that were threatened because these things are parked outside of a base, right? One of them was actually caught by locals. Now, the thing is, it depends on how you define terrorism. The deliberate targeting of civilians to sow chaos and terror is obvious. The Bryansk bridges clearly fit in that category. The abuse of civilian infrastructure for military means might be considered guerrilla warfare, especially if the participants are part of the uprising of the population fighting against the government, so that they're going to create a widespread dissatisfaction and popular uprising. That's the traditional point of this, not just for headlines. Now, what happens? What happens? Who responds to this? Civilians in Siberia actually caught one of these damn trucks, and they climbed on top of it, knowing that it had explosives and weapons in it. And they stopped it. Then either them or others got together and were holding signs. They said, "Vrag nash." Now I forget the word. Our struggle is correct, and the enemy will be eliminated. This is not the local population that's helping you rise up. This is just an abuse of the civilian supply chain to pursue a lousy, crappy, sneaky, behind the back military attack that you otherwise cannot carry out. That's asymmetric warfare. That's the whole point of fighting a much bigger enemy who's going to slaughter you if you don't do these things. Just like, revolutionary soldiers in the US hiding behind walls and shooting at British soldiers from behind rocks. And they said, "I say, this is untenable. It's not a real fight. What are they doing? Because they still had that accent. They still have it now because they invented it. Anyway, that's not what happened. And it's Britain. It is the classic overusers of this tactic. The targeting the civilians, the diversionary tactics. This is what they did in Kursk, which was supposed to make some big headline. And what happened actually while this was going on? Not just retaliatory, already planned. They're already happening. There were drone sites that were destroyed. There were missiles that landed in the SVO area in Ukraine. All of this is just happening. And this has zero effect on any of it. The effect is what we're seeing right now. The effect is press releases. And so we have to be careful to join that stream and tell the truth. This is not truth. There was no huge devastation. There is nothing that even ties the hand of Russia. The devastation is different. And this is important to say. It is devastating, but in a very, very different way. What I just described is an ugliness that has been at the center of this conflict forever, but has not been this blatant and this aggressive. Why was it possible to hit these air bases? Right. Of the obviously some breaches, right? But you have a signator to a START treaty between U.S. and Russia from 2010, the SDN3, which Russia said, we're not gonna follow that. A couple of years ago, I guess. I don't know. After this, but the U.S. never did. So U.S. is a signer of this treaty. And one of the elements of the treaty, everyone thinks this was crazy. Why would you just leave these bombers out in the open like that? That's crazy. Because that is required by the treaty. They have to be out in the open, on ramps. They have to be visible, and they are given access for satellite imagery to prove that they are or are not ready for nuclear combat, and how many there are. So this information that was shared by the US, by Britain, by some Finnish satellite that can tag into this whole thing. Who knows? We don't know it yet. But you do know what side it was from. And you do know that it is strictly forbidden by this treaty that you pretend that you want, that Russia is violating, and you're being a good guy because you stuck with it. So you can satellite imagery to feed a proxy whom you have directed and financed to start infiltrating the civilian supply chain and strike potentially a leg of the nuclear triad. That is devastating. That is shocking, because START is stopped. Okay? START is stopped. There is nothing to be said apart from that. And what does that do? Okay, what is the U.S. role? That was all over the place now, if you've seen this. Axios said that they heard from a Ukrainian official that the Trump administration was warned about this beforehand. Then NBC or one of these said they talked to the administration and they said, no, that's not true. We had no knowledge. And Axios withdrew their earlier statement. It's, who cares? Again, we're talking about roots. We're talking about reality and about truth. And the whole thing of this is to distract you from the truth so that you cannot call the shots or call the truth where it is. Right? Did he? No, or didn't he? If he did, that's devastating. Then he has allowed a proxy to go so far as to break a nuclear treaty in the open and with support from allies. That's not an escalation. That's restarting the Cold War, and that is inviting nuclear war. That's what that is. Okay, so maybe he didn't know. Then he is bamboozled by a proxy who goes on his own or with collusion from one or more of the other allies to do this behind the US's back. Then there's some real like messed up status of the cards in your house of cards. It's not falling, it's on fire. And you are allowing the destruction of any semblance of commitment to balance, to peace, and to negotiating with you. Why? Why would anyone anyway, with any view of history, and why would anyone after this take you at your word? What word? This 300, what? I guess how long has the U.S. been here? And then it goes to the Brits before that. Treaties are complete crap. They have been for a long time. Look at the indigenous inhabitants of the continent that was settled and colonized by the English and other Europeans that became the United States. Look at the United States' history with virtually everyone. We have, and they're not worth the paper they're written on. Remember, that everyone knows that expression. Or they are toilet paper. Or to quote, I gotta give credit where credit is due. They're not good as toilet paper. They're not even worth toilet paper because it will anal brain cancer from wiping yourself with them. That is Andrei Martyanov, who is a great writer and military expert, and I love his language, and I love Russians' use of English. Right, my ancestors were Irish. The idea of taking over the colonizing language and making it your own is hilarious. And so anyway, that is what this is all about. And there is nothing else that can be gleaned from it yet. I mean, there will be more to say, and there is more to know. Like I said, I'll be speaking later on Sean Atwood's show. I'll try to put the link in here somewhere and subscribe here if you can, so that you can keep up with what's new, or if you enjoy my take on it. I'd appreciate if people would subscribe or buy me a drink, but you can't do that because it doesn't work that way. So buy me a coffee, anything else like that. But the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that everyone's watching this, right? Who's buying it? It looks like the news. It looks like the truth because it is the one being promulgated, not reported. It's promulgated. It is something being written out of whole cloth by the Western media, as they have done without interruption for many, many years. Now, we have other things happening all at once. China has finally come out and said flat out, the U.S. is responsible for the war in Ukraine. Of course, most of the world has already known this. They have known this. Outside of NATO stand, no one believes that crap at all. Nobody believes that it was unprovoked or that it was, Russia is barbaric and, Putin is a dictator who is a silent dictator. You notice he's silent dictator. I put that as the headline on my talk, that silence is golden to the West, apparently. Karma is not. What Russia is doing is plotting the next move against an enemy who wants nothing less than its total destruction. And it's not audacious. It's not bold. It's suicidal. It is rash. It is completely reckless. But again, going back to the MI6 and all of these like feathery, idiotic, pseudo-military gambits, like the thing into Kursk earlier, in which they lost 60,000 people. That's disgusting, avoidable, and beyond belief. And this is the same thing. You wake up in the morning, and all you've done is poke the bear, pissed on the hornet's nest, and run away laughing because you're not the ones who are going to suffer from the reverberations that go on. But you will. That's the thing. It's not gonna stay this way. And we'll see. We'll see probably by the end of the week that what Russia's response, but we already know what they went to that says don't listen. So there's no negotiation. They negotiated today. They came up with, what do I have here? A framework for achieving long-term peace and concrete steps for a full ceasefire. Okay. That's, but it's a lot about receiving the remains of its fallen soldiers. Should Ukraine still be holding any? Unilaterally, Russia will return to Ukraine the frozen remains of 6,000 Ukrainian military personnel. Both sides have agreed in principle to exchange all seriously wounded and critical ill prisoners. See, that's what this is. That's what this is about. That's negotiation. They're not negotiating ceasefire. And there won't be one, because this is what you do on the eve of a ceasefire. This is obviously done by those forces that want to prevent any peaceful solution. They want to keep going, just as they did want at the end of the Great Patriotic War, World War II, against the Nazis. This faction wanted to rearm the Nazis and go on to Moscow. And that is, and right now, my connection is unstable. Okay. I guess I came back. All right. I think that it said my stream was unstable. I'm not unstable, but I can't imagine who would try to stop us from talking like this. To cut up Russia into a bunch of different parts was a weapon of the Nazis and the leave behind the glad Operation Gladio, Operation Paperclip, Operation the Unthinkable, all of this kind of underscored history of the British aristocracy and the early parts of the U.S. government, the CIA, OSS, and all this, and NATO. All of them were aimed at doing this to the Soviet Union. And now you have this idiot from Estonia, this tiny little battleship of a country, who is in charge of EU diplomacy, which is incredibly stupid of Europe. I don't know why. These are people whose grandfathers were Nazis. Don't. I don't know how stupid you have to be to keep not listening to that obvious retort. But she is repeating all of this rhetoric as if it's new. This is stuff that was hidden and came out in the history of the end of the Second World War. Move on to Moscow. And she comes out and says it absolute. It would be good to cut up Russia into smaller parts. What does she want it to be, like 15 Estonias? Like her country? I mean, it is obvious that that's what they are trying to do, and it is obvious that it's never going to work. That is not the scary thing, but the exasperating thing. What is going on in Russia right now is not the people clamoring for Putin to see the truth and to understand and to see the truth that is in the Sun and the Mirror and the New York Post, or all this other crap that is toilet paper, brain cancer, anal derivative that is for consumption and apparent defecation. But we don't need to focus on that. So what is happening is people are joining together, like that one, the group in Siberia. There is the driver of the train in Bryansk was 34-year-old, and his name, because it will never be said by anyone in the West, Pavel Mishin, who died in the explosion of a bridge near Bryansk, saved hundreds of passengers. The Kiev-Moscow train braked and prevented the train from falling further. The driver and his assistant died, but prevented more casualties among the passengers. My husband's management came to us in the morning. They said that he braked in time and thus saved people. There would have been many more deaths if not for his professionalism. Thanks to this, everything turned out well for many passengers. Yekaterina Mishina, the wife of the deceased hero. That's terrorism, and it's beyond belief. What is Trump doing? The world knows. Guess what, Trumpers? You picked the wrong guy. It has nothing to do with his ideology, his line on any of these things. He's the guy in charge now. And the portfolio that he inherited on purpose was to muscle up and bully his way to the front of the line, to be mean and bully and bad and do all that stuff so that America could be great again, right? And what legitimately that translates into in terms of international relations is to go against the tide of history to an extent that is worse than pissing in the wind or shoveling shit against the tide. Any of the urinary defecatory expressions you want to use. It's stupid because everyone sees it. And now he's just that guy, unkind, mean guy. And that's the face. Why would you pick that face? Why? The same reason that no one wants a guy like that at their barbecue on the weekend and does everything they can to avoid, you would pick that as your personality facing the world. Like I said, outside NATO stand, everyone has known this. The U.S. lies. The U.S. cheats. And this is not a welcome turn of events to have someone who is even more bullying and aggressive. And you can put it into, people are starting to warm up to this. They feel confident now. They feel like something's going right. Yeah. We'll see. We shall try it out with you. So this is a little bit of a take on what's happening now. I think West Africa is getting its act together. China is just quietly building up its ties with everyone else. And there's no choice. There's no choice that you can win by being bigger, a bigger idiot and a bigger bully. But that's the path that we're on. So Americans are going to have to decide. Well, they don't have to decide. It's going to happen whether they know it or want it or not. So till next time, please subscribe. Hit the link if you want to catch me later. And tell a friend. And we'll talk. No big whoop.